Forged and Risen, Episode 4, Why People Keep Repeating Cycles. Chapter 1, The Loop You Don't See Before we get into this. If you're serious about building discipline, identity, and structure in your life, books, systems, and full podcast episodes are at forgedandrisen.com. There's a moment most people don't talk about it, but you felt it. That quiet realization when you look at your life and something feels familiar, too familiar, different day, different situation, different people, same outcome, and you try to explain it away. Bad timing, just a coincidence. But deep down, you know, this isn't random, this is a pattern, and patterns repeat. Most people never confront that. They think they're living life, but they're really replaying it. And the dangerous part, it doesn't feel like a loop when you're inside it. It feels real. It feels justified. It feels new, but it's not, because what's happening on the outside is driven by something on the inside. And until that changes, nothing else will. People spend years trying to fix the wrong things. They change environments, relationships, routines, but the results stay the same. Why? Because they're trying to change their life without changing the system that creates it. You can rearrange everything around you, but if your internal system stays the same, your outcomes reset like a thermostat. You can force temporary change, but if the setting doesn't change, everything goes back. Your identity, your standards, your habits, that's your setting. And no matter how many fresh starts you attempt, you return to what you are. That's the loop. And most people never see it. They think they need motivation, better timing, a new opportunity. But what they actually need is a new identity. Because identity is the root, who you believe you are, will always override what you're trying to do, every time. If you see yourself as someone who negotiates, you'll negotiate. If you see yourself as someone inconsistent, you'll fall off. If you still identify with old patterns, you'll repeat them, not because you can't change, but because you're aligned with them. You don't act based on logic. You act based on identity. And identity doesn't change because you want it to. It changes when you prove it wrong, through action, over and over again. But most people don't stay consistent. They get motivated, inspired. They say, this time is different. And for a while, it is. They show up stronger. They push harder. They feel in control. And that feeling creates the illusion that they've changed. But real change isn't proven in your best moments. It's revealed in your weakest ones. Stress, fatigue, pressure. And when they hit, you don't rise to your intentions. You fall to your system every time. If your system hasn't changed, your outcome won't either. So you slip, you skip a day, you justify it. It's not a big deal. I'll start tomorrow. And just like that, the loop begins again. Same thoughts, same actions, same results. Cycle reset. This is why people feel stuck. Not because they can't move forward, but because they keep returning to the same starting point. Over and over and over again. And eventually it feels normal. That's the trap. Because once it feels normal, you stop questioning it. You accept it. You start believing this is just who I am, but it's not. That's repetition, disguised as identity. You're not stuck. You're patterned, and patterns can be broken, but not casually. Breaking a cycle means going against what feels natural, acting differently. When everything in you wants to default, that takes discipline, not motivation. Discipline. And that's where most people stop, because it's easier to repeat what's familiar than to build something new, even if what's familiar is what's holding you back. So they stay, not because they want to, but because they don't realize they're choosing it. And that's the loop you don't see, the identity underneath it all, running the same script again and again and again until one day you decide to change it. Chapter 2, Identity is the Root. Chapter 1 exposed the loop. Chapter 2 explains why it exists, because cycles don't start with actions, they start with identity. Everything you do, every habit you keep, every pattern you repeat comes from who you believe you are, not who you say you are, not who you want to be, who you believe you are. At your core, that's the driver, that's the root. And this is where most people get it wrong. They focus on behavior. Wake up earlier. Be more consistent. Work harder. But behavior without identity never lasts, because eventually you return to what feels like you. That's why someone can be disciplined for a week and fall off the next. Why someone can get motivated, start strong, and then disappear is not a lack of knowledge, it's a mismatch. A mismatch between what they're trying to do and who they believe they are. And identity always wins, every time. If you believe you're inconsistent, you'll find a way to prove it. If you believe you lack discipline, you'll reinforce it. If you believe this is just how I am, you'll protect that identity, even if it's hurting you. That's the part people don't understand. You don't just live your identities, you defend it, even when it's the reason you're stuck. Because identity feels safe, familiar, predictable, and your mind will choose familiar over better every time, even if familiar is costing you everything. That's why change feels so uncomfortable, not because the action is hard, but because it conflicts with who you think you are. When you try to act disciplined, but don't see yourself that way, it feels forced. When you try to stay consistent, but your identity says you fall off, it feels temporary, so what happens? You snap back to what feels like you, back to the loop. This is why people say, I don't know why I keep doing this, but the truth is, they do. They're just not looking at the right level, because the problem isn't the action. The problem is the identity behind it. And until that changes, the cycle stays intact. You can try harder, push more, force more discipline, but if your identity hasn't shifted, you're just fighting yourself. And eventually, you'll lose that fight. Because identity doesn't negotiate, it enforces. So the real question becomes, how do you change it? Not on the surface, at the root. First, you have to see it clearly. You have to identify the version of you that keeps showing up. The one who delays, justifies, falls off, starts over. Not to judge it, but to recognize it. Because you can't change what you won't confront. Second, you stop reinforcing it. Every time you say, that's just how I am, you lock it in. Every time you repeat the same excuse, you strengthen it. Every time you act in alignment with it, you confirm it. So the shift starts here. You stop identifying with the old version of you, not someday, now. You don't say, I'm trying to be disciplined. You say, I am disciplined, and then you prove it through action. Not once, but repeatedly, because identity is built through evidence, not intention, not words, evidence. Every time you follow through, you weaken the old identity. Every time you execute when you don't feel like it, you build a new one. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you shift the standard. That's how identity changes. Not in one big moment, but in small, consistent proof. And here's where most people fall off again. They wait to feel like the new version of themselves before they act like it. That's backwards. You act first. You prove it. Then the identity follows, not the other way around. Because this isn't about motivation. It's about rebuilding who you are at the root. So the next time you catch yourself in a cycle, don't just look at what you did. Look at who showed up. Because that's where the real work is. That's where the shift happens, not in the action, but in the identity behind it. And once that changes, everything else follows. Chapter 3, Comfort is the Addiction. If Chapter 2 showed you that identity is the root, then this is the force that protects it. Comfort. Not just physical comfort, but emotional comfort. The kind that doesn't shout at you, it whispers. The kind that sounds reasonable, safe, almost logical. Take a break. You've done enough. You deserve this. Start tomorrow. It doesn't feel like sabotage. It feels like relief. And that's exactly why it's dangerous. Because comfort doesn't stop you all at once. It pulls you off course. One small decision at a time. You don't wake up one day and decide to fall off. You ease into it. You justify one action, then another, until suddenly you're right back in the same place you said you'd never return to. And here's the truth most people avoid. They're not stuck. They're comfortable in their habits, comfortable in their patterns, comfortable in what they know, even if what they know is holding them back because comfort is predictable and predictable feels safe, even when it's costing you growth, even when it's costing you progress, even when it's costing you the life you say you want. That's the trap. You don't just repeat cycles, you protect them because they don't feel like problems anymore. They feel normal. And once something feels normal, you stop resisting it. You start allowing it. You stop questioning it. And slowly, you start building your life around it. That's how comfort locks you in, not through force, through permission. It gives you just enough of an excuse to stay the same. And every time you listen, you reinforce the identity from chapter 2, the version of you that you said you wanted to change. That's how the loop tightens, because identity and comfort work together. Your identity says, this is who you are, and comfort says, stay there. And together, they keep you exactly where you've always been. This is why discipline feels so hard, because discipline is uncomfortable. It goes against the pattern. It interrupts the loop. It challenges the identity. And your mind resists that, not because you're weak, but because your brain is wired to avoid discomfort. So it pulls you back to what's easy, back to what's familiar, back to what requires less effort, even if that's the very thing that's keeping you stuck. That's why people say, I just don't feel like it today. And that one sentence keeps the entire cycle alive, because feelings are temporary. But the decisions you make in those moments are not. Every time you choose comfort over discipline, you strengthen the pattern. Every time you avoid what's hard, you reinforce the identity. Every time you delay, you deepen the loop. And over time, it becomes automatic. You don't even think about it anymore. You just follow the same script, same reactions, same excuses, same outcomes. That's when it's fully embedded. That's when the cycle owns you. And the scary part, you can still be busy. You can still be active. You can still feel like you're trying. But underneath it all, nothing is changing, because comfort keeps redirecting you back to the same place again and again and again. So if identity is the root, comfort is the fuel. It feeds the pattern. It protects the pattern. It sustains the pattern. And until you confront that, you'll keep repeating it, not because you don't know what to do, but because you keep choosing what feels better over what moves you forward. That's the shift. You have to stop asking, what do I feel like doing? And start asking, what moves me forward? Well, because those are rarely the same thing. Comfort will always point you backward. Discipline will always move you forward. And at first, that choice will feel unnatural, uncomfortable, forced, good. That's how you know you're breaking the pattern, because growth never feels like the old version of you. And the moment you start choosing discipline consistently, you begin to weaken the cycle, not all at once, but piece by piece, decision by decision, action by action, until one day, what used to feel uncomfortable becomes who you are, and what used to feel normal no longer fits. That's when the cycle breaks, not when you feel ready, but when you stop choosing comfort, because comfort isn't harmless, it's addictive, and like any addiction, it keeps pulling you back into the same result until you decide you're done feeding it. Chapter 4, Breaking the Cycle. By now you see it, the loop, the identity behind it, the comfort that protects it. So the question isn't, why does this keep happening? The question is, what am I going to do about it? Because awareness alone changes nothing. You can understand every pattern. You can see every mistake. You can even predict what you're about to do and still repeat it. Because awareness without action is just observation, and observation doesn't break cycles. Execution does. This is where everything shifts. Not in what you know, but in what you do consistently, because breaking a cycle isn't one big moment. It's a series of decisions made when it matters most, when you're tired, when you're stressed, when you don't feel like it. That's where the cycle is either reinforced or broken. So if you want real change, you need structure, not motivation. Structure. Because motivation fades, but structure holds. And it starts with this: non-negotiables, not goals, not intentions, standards. Things you do no matter how you feel. You don't ask, do I feel like it today? You say, this is who I am. And then you act accordingly. That's how identity locks in, through repetition, through consistency, through execution, when it's inconvenient. because that's what separates people who stay stuck from people who break free. They stop negotiating. They stop debating. They remove the option to fall back. And once you do that, everything changes because now you're not relying on how you feel. You're relying on what you've decided. That's power. The next piece is your environment, because your environment either supports your discipline or it weakens it. If everything around you makes it easy to quit, you will. If everything around you makes it easy to delay, you will. So you have to build an environment that makes execution the default, not the exception. Remove distractions, eliminate easy outs, create friction for the behaviors you're trying to escape, and reduce friction for the ones you're trying to build, because willpower is limited. But structure, because it's scalable, and then comes the most important part, follow through. Not when it's easy, when it's hard, when your mind starts negotiating, when comfort starts whispering, when your old identity starts pulling at you. That's the moment, that's the test. And every time you pass it, you change. Not instantly, but permanently, because every action becomes evidence, and that evidence builds identity. The new version of you, the one who executes, the one who follows through, the one who doesn't fall back. And once that identity takes hold, the cycle has nothing left to attach to. That's how it breaks. Not through motivation, not through hype, but through disciplined repetition. Day after day, decision after decision, until the old pattern no longer exists. And here's the truth. It's not going to feel natural at first. It's going to feel uncomfortable, forced, heavy, good. That means you're doing something different. That means you're no longer operating from the same identity. That means the cycle is breaking, because if it felt easy, you'd still be the same. So don't look for easy, look for progress. Look for execution. Look for proof, because that's what builds real change. And if you stay with it, if you stop negotiating, if you follow through, there will come a point where you don't recognize the old version of yourself anymore, where the things that used to control you no longer have power over you, where discipline isn't something you try to do. It's just who you are, and that's the goal, not temporary change, permanent identity, because once that's in place, the cycle doesn't come back. It can't. There's nothing left for it to attach to. And that's when you realize you were never stuck. You were just repeating without a system to break it. But now you have one. Now you see it. Now it's on you. So the next time you're faced with the choice, comfort or discipline, default or execution, old identity or new one, decide and then act. Because that decision, repeated enough times, changes everything. And this is where the cycle ends. If this hit you, if you're ready to stop repeating and start rebuilding your identity the right way, go deeper. Books, systems, and full podcast episodes are at forgedandrisen.com. This is Damian Cox, and this is the Forged and Risen podcast.